What's up, my fellow critical thinkers? Yes, 2 straight days with morsels of my show, Critical Thinking, for you to consume. What could possibly be better than that? Today, I come to you with a look at data from the April 7th Wisconsin primary. Why am I talking about that now? Well, because of 2 things. Coronavirus, duh, and mass gatherings. On April 7th, some 495,786 people chose exercising their right to vote over fear of getting COVID-19. It was also the biggest test of the hypothesis of community spread and spikes in COVID-19 cases possible. It was also the largest gathering of human beings in the United States at any one time since the virtual shutdown of our country, making what happened since then very relative to the times that we are living in now. If for no other reason, then guess what? It's a great window into what could happen when we do begin to reopen society in the coming weeks and months, looking at you, Mayor Lightfoot. If there has been death, spikes in hospitalizations and ICU stays, well, then mass gatherings probably not a good idea in any way, shape, or form. If not, maybe we can slowly begin to ramp up the amount of people allowed into the same space at the same time. Slowly, but I digress. If you can remember all the way back to April 7th, you likely saw virtual signaling unlike anything you've ever seen before. And for those of you not on Twitter, congrats on that, because April 7th was brutal. Things weren't much better in the media as headlines like these dotted the online media landscape. Politico, Wisconsin is holding the most dangerous election ever. Here's why. Tell that to the people of Afghanistan. Vanity Fair, Wisconsin's dangerous election is a chilling warning for November. The Washington Post, Wisconsin's debacle may be the most infuriating of the coronavirus failures. The Hill, Republicans put lives in danger to try to steal an election. Now they want to take your away right to vote. Sweet headline editing there, bro. The New York Times, I'm scared. Wisconsin puts poll workers at risk of virus. Wisconsin State Journal, Wisconsin Republicans are exploiting the pandemic to grab power. It's a dangerous precedent. Los Angeles Times, letter to the editor, Republicans' voter suppression takes a dark, dangerous turn in Wisconsin. National Review, Wisconsin's coronavirus election. I could go on and on and on and on, but I think you get the point. Wisconsin holding its primary was supposed to be the apocalypse of all apocalypses. Mass death, thousands sickened, and dead people everywhere. So today, it is April 23rd, and that means we are now officially 2 days beyond the known incubation period for coronavirus, which means we have access to a full set of data around what has taken place in the state since then. Did Wisconsin's in-person voting give us a mass spike in cases? Did it result in the state becoming unhealthier? What is the data telling us are the conclusions that we can make compared to the headlines that I just talked about? So let's get into the data. And I'm going to start with this story from ABC News to start the dive into the data. The headline, 19 new cases of coronavirus in Wisconsin linked to election activities, state health officials. 19 new cases of COVID-19 from a group of nearly 460,000 people? That's statistically zero, folks, and if you're wanting to get technical with me, it's actually 0.00004% of those who voted in person on April 7th in Wisconsin. Now, we also need to know that in Wisconsin, case numbers were actually pretty low overall as of April 6th. According to Wisconsin Public Radio, on April 6th, the total cases in the state added up to just 2,440. What that means is that the 19 new cases that the state health department is talking about would represent a whopping increase of 0.7%. Yes, less than a 1% increase in the number of overall cases. That's it. Let's say that this was a normal election and the vast majority of people voted in person, unlike this. Let's just say every single person did that. All 1.5 million people who cast a ballot in Wisconsin's primaries between the Democrats and Republicans, because over 620,000 people cast a ballot for President Trump, more than Joe Biden's winning total on the Democratic side, by the way, but again, I digress. If you take the percentage of 0.00004% and apply it to the total number of voters, it would give us a whopping 62 new cases. 62! An extra 62 people in the entire state would have contracted COVID-19. All of that is important if you were to take that headline from ABC News at face value. But it's ABC News, and you can't trust their headlines or reporting as far as you can throw them. You see, just 2 paragraphs into the story on ABC News' website, and I'm sure you're going to be shocked by this, the story notes, But a department spokesman told ABC News that several of these people reported other possible exposures as well. Officials are hesitant to link the new cases of the coronavirus directly to the election. No bleep, ABC News. No bleep. This, my friends, is what we call a causational fallacy. Because Wisconsin State Health Department knows this fact to be true, it is virtually impossible to be able to know for certain that voting was the cause of getting COVID-19 for those 19 individuals. They even say as much in the actual article in paragraph 3, otherwise known as the next paragraph to the one that I just gave you. Quote, since we only have data on positive cases without a comparison group of people who were not tested or tested negative, there's no way to know with certainty if any exposures at the polls that are reported are in fact attributable to COVID-19 illness, the spokesperson said, unquote. That leads one to believe what compared to the headline? If we're thinking critically about the statements from the Wisconsin Department of Health, it would have to mean that there's this possibility of those 19 people having contracted COVID-19 at the polls, but that there's no way to know what the probability of that is, which means ABC News' headline doesn't match with the body of the story, which in turn means that either the copy editor or headline writer at ABC News is a complete moron, or they did it on purpose. Given ABC News' track record on stuff like this, I'm going to have to go with the latter until they can prove the former to be true. Look, folks, I've worked in enough virtual newsrooms to know how this process works, and there is no way that that article nor the headline didn't get passed up the food chain and thus okayed by multiple levels of people within the organization. If that didn't happen, then ABC News has a much larger structural issue, and that's for a different time in a different video. But it isn't just the stats that are being released on the people that the state of Wisconsin knows voted and subsequently contracted COVID-19 that makes me go, It's also the data points beyond those numbers that make me wonder if all of this was dumb and we were all made to suffer for no good reason at all. Remember, the media and leftist Twittersphere were warning us that doomsday scenarios, spikes in cases, and everything bad would happen as a result of Wisconsin going to the polls. Well, let's go ahead and take a wider look at what the state looks like from March 15th until the 21st of April. And I'll get into why that cutoff matters beyond it being just the 14-day incubation period in a bit. But let's take a look at this chart from the Wisconsin Department of Health regarding cumulative and newly found cases of COVID-19 in the state. The navy blue line is the cumulative number, while the light blue line is the newly counted cases on a daily basis. I'll give you a second to look at those numbers. What did you see there? I see a steady increase in the cumulative numbers, but no significant spike. I also see a very flat overall line for the daily new cases up until the final 2 days in that chart, yesterday and today. We're going to remove those 2 days from consideration because those two spikes to over 200 new cases per day is largely related to a single outbreak at a meatpacking plant in Green Bay. In other words, they had absolutely no way to be related to voting on April 7th, which is what this is all about. When you dig further into the day-by-day case numbers, you see a trend that makes the assumption of apocalyptic consequences for cases in Wisconsin completely fall apart. First off, new cases in the state never go above the 200 mark from April 7th to the 21st, and that is pretty much in line with the numbers prior to April 7th as well. According to the data from the Wisconsin Department of Health, Wisconsin saw its first day of 100 or more new cases on March 22nd, and have only had 3 days in which that number was below 100 since then. 3 days in a month would be the exception instead of the rule, whereas the state saw 150 or more new cases for both the prior 6 days leading up to the election day, and then the 7 out of 14 days between April 7th and the 21st. The other 7 days were as follows: 1 below 100 new cases and 6 between 100 and 150. Again, the working theory for the media, the experts, and the Twittersphere was that Wisconsin was screwed and the Republicans just put everybody in danger by enforcing the laws of the state. Instead, the data from the consistent source in the state tells us that nothing has changed from patterns before the election to patterns happening after the election. Things don't get much better when you look at the most populous areas in the state because new cases in Madison have taken a dramatic turn downwards. And that was even the case heading into April 7th primary day. New daily cases reached a peak on March 25th at 27 cases. And we're at about 10 cases on April 7th. Since then, only 2 days, the 8th and 10th, were higher. And that could be easily attributed to an increase in testing as we go on, more than anybody catching coronavirus 2 days earlier. Milwaukee County, the state's biggest county, is a bit different because of its reporting and testing differences, but we haven't seen a spike in cases since April 9th, and on that day, one of the largest hospitals in the area actually updated its reporting, and thus the spike upwards in hospitalization numbers in the county. But since that day, daily hospitalization rates have actually dropped dramatically from that spike. You would have expected that number to level off. Again, the premise is that we should have actually seen a massive uptick in cases overall and a spike at some point. Because of the exposure to the most people since the lockdown began, and in that state, likely the largest gathering of people in many areas of the state since the Packers season ended. But that's not the reality of the data. Instead, we see a very steady rate of both new cases and hospitalizations, which is equally important because we've also been told that this is all about not overwhelming the healthcare system. How is it possible when the experts and the media were telling us that all of this was going to fall apart in the state? It's not as if Wisconsin has been in a heat wave that could have killed the virus. Instead, the state has seen multiple rounds of snow, cold weather, and a few decent days sprinkled in between. Could it be that we just don't understand the virus enough to make assumptions like the experts and media have been making all along? Could it be that no one will learn the lessons of the only mass gathering to take place since the virtual nationwide lockdown took place? Well, I would suggest the answer to both questions is yes. I mean, look at the neighboring state to the south, my state, Illinois. We just got word that the stay-at-home order will be in place through May 30th, and we're now going to be required to wear a mask to go outside of our homes. Sure, some businesses are going to be allowed to reopen, but not even close to full capacity. In other words, the place that shares a border has apparently decided to not take in the data that we just gave you in any way, shape, or form. If it did, we'd likely see a much different outcome from our governor. But as I always encourage here on Critical Thinking, both the radio and the YouTube show, you be the judge, do your own research, and then leave a comment below or hit me up on social media at The Coppin Show. While you're at it, don't forget to hit subscribe and that notification bell here on YouTube if this is your first time here at the Critical Thinking page. I'll see you on Saturday for the full hour of Critical Thinking on Mojo 50 Radio and the Mojo 50 Facebook page. Until then, Matthew 5:44.